So now, please welcome the official, non-official, non-sponsor of the Savannah Bananas, but a big fan. Please welcome Jon Fletcher.
Well, thank you, my friend Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas, and welcome to another edition of 15 on Fridays with Fletch. Today we have one of the greatest storytellers in all of Texas, perhaps the greatest. He's following a career in radio and TV, including NBC Radio. Tumbleweed Smith, his real name is Bob Lewis, originated Orange House Productions in 1969 and began producing The Sound of Texas with Tumbleweed Smith. His weekday radio show runs on 47 radio stations and his weekly printed programs and published in 27 newspapers. The past 55 years, he's produced over 14,000 programs. And the program is an entirely Texan exhibit of what makes this great state tick. He's won all kinds of awards, including the Best Program from Western Public Radio, the Governor's Tourism Award from the state of Texas, and this past November 1st, I was there when he was inducted into the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. And Rotarians, he's also a former district governor. Please welcome the legendary Tumbleweed Smith.
I love it. Let's do that over again. I'm glad you're recording this. That's beautiful, Jon. Thank you.
Well, and you remember, you may not know it, but when I managed KCLE Radio in Cleburne, we carried your program, The Sound of Texas.
KCLE, right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you worked with some legendary TV stations early in your career, KPRC in Houston, WHO in Des Moines, then NBC Radio. What was that like with the big boys?
Oh, my gosh. Well, when I was at WHO in Des Moines, and I went there right after I had finished my graduate studies in journalism at the University of Missouri. I went to WHO, and that's such a great station. One of the things I really wanted to do in radio was to work for a 50,000 watt station and then be on a network. So WHO took care of both of those things because I did the 10 o'clock news on WHO, and then it was through WHO that I started my career with NBC Radio. And one of the interviews I did was with an 11-year-old blind girl, and she was so enthusiastic about life and so thrilled about watching television and jumping and just having the best time. Her attitude was just beautiful. And I got back to the station after interviewing, and after that program aired locally in Des Moines. And somebody said, "Why don't you send that to NBC Radio? I think they could use that. That they kind of look for that kind of stuff." And I said, "Who should I send it to?" And they gave me the producer of Monitor, NBC Radio Monitor, which was a weekend series back in the late 60s and early 70s. And I had a letter back, and they said, "Your program with the 11-year-old blind girl is going to be aired on like 2:20 p.m. on this date." And I went out and bought a brand new stereo system and put it in my living room so I could listen to myself on an NBC station. And NBC Radio went all over the world. It was on Armed Forces Radio and all that. And it was such a thrill to know that something I had created was going to be, on a major network. That was really, really a big thrill for me.
Well, speaking of big thrills, Tumbleweed, you worked with Paul Harvey. Tell us about that.
Well, it all started, Paul Harvey and I wrote columns for the same newspaper. And every once in a while, he would see something that I had written, and he would give me a call and ask me about some details on this story or that story. And yes, it was just, you talk about a thrill. Paul Harvey was, I think, everybody's ideal as far as a radio personality. There's never been one before or since. Paul Harvey would be very impossible to replace. And anyway, guys, you have an idol, and he was definitely my radio idol for sure. And to be able to send him stuff and talk to him on the phone was just absolutely a big thrill. I've talked to some broadcasters who were able to go to his studio in Chicago and watch him do a cast. But I've never I didn't do that, and I wish I could have done that.
That would have been amazing. Well, we consider you to be the Texas version of Paul Harvey. So
Well, that
you're our Paul Harvey today.
somebody called me the Mark Twain of the Texas Plain, and I I thought that was quite an honor. But
So tell us, how did you first originate the concept?
well, I had been doing this stuff for NBC, and I kept and a lot of the stuff that I did for NBC was in Texas. And they wrote me back or called me back, and they said, we've had really good response to your stuff on Texas. And I said, well, I wonder if Texans would enjoy hearing about themselves on a daily basis. And so I got 5 feature programs ready, and I sent that tape and a little brochure and a letter to 65 West Texas radio stations, because it was intended to be just in West Texas. And I got a post office box, and I expected to have all these letters flooding the mailbox. One station bought my program in Littlefield, Texas. So, man, I had a network. I had KZZN in Littlefield and KHEM in Big Spring. And I was on my way, man. I had a network, but by the and that was August 1st, 1969 is when it started, and it was called originally. It was called Tumbleweed because it was Tumbleweed, such a strong West Texas symbol, and I just named it that. My middle name is Smith. So when I was working for NBC doing features, I would sign off, this is Bob Lewis reporting for Monitor. And when I started my program, I said, this is Bob Lewis reporting for Tumbleweed. And it was Tumbleweed for about 6 months. So on April 1st, 1970, I changed the name from Tumbleweed to the Sound of Texas, and I became Tumbleweed Smith, using my middle name, because people in Big Spring, where I live, were calling me Tumbleweed because of the program. At the end of December, I quit my job because I had 5 radio stations airing the Sound of Texas, airing Tumbleweed. It was Tumbleweed then. And so my wife was scared to death, and so was I. But I really knew everything was going to be okay. So I got in my car and drove about 100,000 miles a year, going to virtually every radio station in Texas, trying to convince these hard-headed owners and managers that I had something that they could gain an audience with and gain some money with. And so thank goodness the Enough station bought it. We moved into our dream house in 1971. But those 2 years, looking back on those 2 years, it was such an exciting time, meeting everybody, doing interviews, out there starting a new business, new enterprise, and to see that it was taking off. Then people starting asked me to come do commercials for them and be speaking at their chamber banquets, and oh my goodness, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speeches, and I love doing it. They're one of the most favorite things that I do is making people laugh, and that's what my speeches are. They're all humor, so Texas humor. But my program. It's all about what makes Texas Texas. I mean, it's small towns, folklore, history, unique events, and most of all, it's wonderful characters and storytellers. Storytellers are what I look for most, and I really do would like, and I do concentrate on looking for good storytellers.
I know you've got a really interesting first story, and the guy also appeared again on your 10,000th story. Tell us about that.
Well, the movie Midnight Cowboy was filmed. The first 10 minutes of that movie was filmed in Big Spring. And it was Jon Voight's first movie. and it was so much fun visiting with Jon Voight. So he was the very first program on Tumbleweed, on my radio program, the very first program. Later on my 10,000th program, I called Jon Voight and did another interview with him on my 10,000th radio program, and he was by this time he had done 70 movies, so he was an enormous star. But it was just like I was talking to him in 1968 and 69 back in Big Spring when he was doing Midnight Cowboy. He was so very nice. He even said that he remembered me. I mean, he was very nice of him to say that.
Well, that's great. Well, tell us about a couple of stories that make you grin when you think of them.
Well, of course, I started my program in '69, man. And we had just had a Texan leave the White House. The Texas chili culture was just emerging. The Texas Folklife Festival was just starting in San Antonio. And all of these wonderful characters started showing up all over the state. Well, I met Ace Reed when he was making an appearance in Snyder, Texas. And Ace is, in my estimation, the best storyteller I've ever run across. And I spent many nights on his ranch. It was called the Dragon S, just outside of Kerrville. And there was story after story after story from this marvelous storyteller. And Ace was a very good friend of Hondo Crouch, who put Lukenbach, Texas on the map and had fun doing it. So those are the top of the list as far as interesting, funny storytellers, and in fact, Hondo, I think, was really the first and only folk hero that I have ever interviewed. He was surrounded by people, and I had interviewed him before, and we'd kind of been friends. I had a license plate on my car, was TMBLWD, Tumbleweed Without Vowels. Nobody knew that I was in Fredericksburg, and I pulled into a motel to spend the night. Well, about 9 o'clock at night, there was a knock on my door. It was Hondo. And he said, "I bought a town." And we went out to his ranch, and he told me all about getting Lukenbach. And on my speeches, on my after dinner speeches and speeches I make to museums and libraries, etc., I use the voices of the people that I've interviewed. And when I use that Hondo Crouch interview on a speech, it is hardly edited at all from that original interview I did in 1970, 71, 72, somewhere along in there. It was so fresh and so invigorating, and he was so funny and so, I do small towns, man. And I usually end the speech with Hondo or Ace, each one of them, because they're both fabulous. And those are the two, Ace and Hondo. They're quite a pair.
Well, on November 1st, you were inducted into the Texas Radio Hall of Fame with the biggest names in radio in Texas. So tell us what that meant to you.
To be on the same wall as other people that I've admired for a long time, it meant the world. I mean, that's about the biggest award you could have, I think, in radio, is be on the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. My goodness, they're just person after person that I've admired all these years, and I'm up there with them. And I didn't know it was going to happen. I had been nominated 3 times, and it finally made it. I was thrilled to death to be there. My goodness, and to be there with my two sons and my wife, that was extra special. And I can't tell you how many people, broadcasters who heard my program, people who listened to the program, they came to Kilgore and to the Broadcast Museum where the event took place to see me get that award. And you know that meant everything. My goodness, yeah. There was I mean, I interviewed the guy who runs it, Doug
Yeah.
Harris. He said man, you're up there with Wolfman Jack. And I said, man, listen, I'm in really good company, and yes, I am. Oh, of course, you know, thrilled to death to be in the Hall of Fame. My goodness, you know, it's
Well,
wonderful.
well, that's incredible. Well, thank you for joining us today, Tumbleweed. You have been so much fun. You've been listening to 15 on Fridays with Fletch with my special guest, Tumbleweed Smith, who's produced over 14,000 radio shows under the sound of Texas with Tumbleweed Smith. Tumbleweed, thank you so much. I will definitely have you back again.
Thank you, John. It's been fun.